For 60 years, almost every big rocket has wrapped its engines inside a protective shell. This year, one company deleted it, and on the very first flight, that exact part of the rocket tore itself apart. So the question writes itself: was deleting it genius or disaster? Here's the honest answer up front. We don't fully know yet, but we do know exactly what was removed and why, because it's all sitting in the engineering record. So tonight we'll do 3 things: find the real part they deleted, weigh the case for brilliance against the case for catastrophe, and look hard at what that first flight actually proved and what it didn't. It starts with a phrase the company's founder repeats like a mantra: the best part is no part. The idea is ruthless. Any piece of a rocket that isn't strictly demanded by the laws of physics is just weight. And weight is the enemy of everything. So when they designed the third version of their giant rocket, they didn't tweak the old one. They redrew it from a blank sheet around a single obsession: delete everything they possibly could. The result is the largest flying machine ever built, about 124 meters tall, heavier when fueled than any object humanity has ever flown, and meant to haul more than 100 tons to orbit and then come back to do it again. And in a stripped-down, throwaway version, closer to 200 tons. And to get there, they went hunting for mass to kill. Now, the internet had a lot of theories about what got cut, and most of them were wrong. Getting this right matters, because it's how you separate the real story from the noise. The forward flaps, the fins up near the nose, not deleted. They were moved and simplified, but they're still there. The rocket physically can't come home without them. The internal landing tanks people swore were gone, also still there. They were actually wrapped in a vacuum jacket to keep the fuel cold longer. So what was genuinely deleted? One of the 4 big steering fins on the booster. That part's real, they dropped to 3. And the throwaway ring between the 2 stages, gone, folded directly into the structure so nothing gets discarded on every flight. But none of those is the deletion that matters. The big one is something most people never even knew was there. Look at the base of almost any rocket ever flown, and you'll find the engines tucked inside a kind of skirt, an aerodynamic shroud wrapping the whole engine section. It's there for a reason. Rocket engines leak. Tiny amounts of methane and oxygen seep out, and inside that sealed space, they can pool into something explosive. So engineers do 2 things. They wrap the engines in that protective shell, and they fill the bay with fire suppression hardware, heavy tanks of carbon dioxide, standing by to smother a fire before it spreads. Every version of this rocket before had exactly that setup. The third version deleted all of it. The shrouds? Gone. The enclosed engine bay? Gone. The carbon dioxide fire suppression system? Gone entirely. So how do you dare strip the fire protection off a rocket? Because of the engine itself. The new engine, the 3rd generation Raptor, did something radical. It swallowed its own plumbing. Every sensor, every wire, every cooling line that used to hang on the outside was pulled inside and printed directly into the engine's body. From the outside, it looks almost naked, so bare that when the company first revealed a photo, a rival rocket executive accused them of posting a picture of a half-finished engine because there was nothing on the surface to see. The company's reply was 4 words: works pretty good for a partially assembled engine. And the logic cascades. If there's no external plumbing to protect, you don't need the shroud. No shroud, no sealed space for gas to collect. No sealed space, no need for fire suppression. One deletion knocked over the next, like dominoes. The payoff? Around 1 ton of weight saved on every single engine, roughly 33 tons off the booster alone, and close to 40 across the whole rocket. And that bare engine isn't just lighter, it's stronger, putting out roughly 8% more thrust than the version before it while shedding 100 kilograms, which gives it a power-to-weight ratio beyond anything else in its class. And this is where the case for genius gets genuinely compelling, because in rocketry, there's a tyranny to the math. Every kilogram you strip off the empty vehicle pays you back many times over in payload you can actually carry to orbit. So shaving nearly 40 tons off the stack isn't a tweak. It can be the entire difference between a rocket that can land cargo on the moon and one that simply can't. And that fire hazard they deleted, they didn't beat it by inventing a better extinguisher. They beat it by deleting the room the fire needed. No enclosed bay means no trapped gas. Any leak just disperses into open air or into the vacuum of space. They solved a danger by removing geometry instead of adding hardware. There's more. A massive new fuel pipe running down the spine of the booster, nearly as wide as an entire smaller rocket, lets all 33 engines ignite in the same instant instead of in a careful staggered sequence. That makes the violent flip-and-burn maneuvers faster and, in theory, more reliable. On paper, every one of these moves is beautiful. And remember why they're willing to gamble at all. This rocket was never meant to fly just once. The plan is to launch it, refuel it in orbit from another one exactly like it, and push on to the moon, and to deploy a whole new generation of satellites, as many as 60 in a single flight. None of that math closes if the rocket is heavy. The deletions aren't recklessness for its own sake. They're the entry fee for the missions the company has actually promised, which is exactly what makes the bet so high stakes. It isn't optional. But turn the very same facts over, and you get the case for disaster. Start with that deleted fire suppression. The engines are now packed tightly together and fully exposed, and while the company added small shields between them, there's no system left to actually put a fire out. If one engine has a hard start or a pump fractures and sparks a metal fire, there may be nothing to stop it spreading to its neighbors before the computer can even react. Then there's the engine itself. By burying all that plumbing inside, they also made it impossible to fix. A technician can no longer swap a stuck valve or a frayed wire on the launch pad. If anything is wrong, the entire engine has to be pulled out and replaced. And if a cooling channel deep inside the engine cracks, it can fail catastrophically, with no warning visible from the outside at all. Even the steering carries new risk. Going from 4 fins to 3 removes an entire axis of symmetry. The 3 that remain are larger, but if just one jams in the searing heat of re-entry, the flight computer has far less authority to save the vehicle. And there's one more exposed nerve. By deleting that throwaway ring between the stages, they left the top of the booster, a dome with tons of propellant just behind it, shielded by little more than a thin skin of steel and the pressure of the fuel inside. When the upper stage lights its engines just above it, that dome takes the full blast. If the pressure behind it ever drops at the wrong moment, the flame could burn straight through. Every deletion that saves weight also quietly removes a safety net. So which is it? Genius or disaster? On May 22nd, the rocket finally answered, and it answered with both verdicts at once. The top half, the ship, was a triumph. It climbed to space, opened its bay, and released its payload, then survived the inferno of re-entry, even deliberately pulling off a single heat shield tile in flight to measure the stress on the ones around it, before splashing down gently on the far side of the world. On that half of the rocket, the radical philosophy worked beautifully. But the booster, the half with the stripped bare engine bay, did not. As it turned to fly home and tried to relight its engines for the journey back, they started to fail. Of the 28 engines meant to fire, only 20 lit, and most of those died within seconds. You could hear it in the mission control commentary, the team calling out that they weren't seeing nearly as many booster engines as they expected. The burn was cut short, the booster tumbled, and it slammed into the Gulf of Mexico and was destroyed. 5 days later, the FAA formally declared the flight a mishap. And here is the line I will not cross because the engineering doesn't support it. The failure happened in exactly the bay they stripped bare. That's true, and it's haunting. But the official investigation is still open, and the cause might not be the missing shroud at all. It could be a pressure drop in that enormous new fuel pipe. It could be a software error in the flip. It could be heat from the staging burning into the now exposed dome above the engines. We genuinely do not know yet, so anyone telling you the deletion definitely caused the crash is guessing. What we can fairly say is narrower and heavier. The boldest gamble on the entire rocket was the first thing to fail, on its very first try. So step back. Genius or disaster? The honest answer is that it's neither. It's a bet. Every one of these deletions makes the exact same wager. Trade away a backup, a fallback, a safety net, in exchange for less weight and more performance. When it works, you get the lightest, most capable rocket ever flown. When a single part fails, there is nothing standing behind it to catch the fall. The best part is no part is a brilliant philosophy. Right up until the part you chose to keep is the one that breaks. Flight 12 was the first real audit of that bet, and it came back split straight down the middle. The ship proved the philosophy can work, and the booster showed you precisely where its edge is, and the stakes only climb from here. Everything riding on this machine, landing astronauts back on the moon, launching the next generation of satellites, the whole promise of cheap, fully reusable heavy lift, all of it depends on this gamble paying off. Not once, but over and over, reliably. The next handful of flights are where that question finally gets settled. Whether deleting the safety nets was the boldest leap in modern rocketry, or the moment they cut one part too many. We'll be reading every filing and watching every flight to find out, so stick around, and we'll see you at the next launch.